All right, we're studying Yeshayahu, Isaiah, starting chapter 1, doing a fresh start. I know we went through, I think, 15 chapters before, but we're gonna do it again. And to start us off is Brother Roy. Go ahead, Brother Roy, chapter 1.
Chapter 1, Yeshayahu. The vision of Yeshayahu, the son of Amatz, which he saw concerning Yehuda in Jerusalem in the days of Josiah, Johanan, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Yehuda. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for Yahuwah has spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. The ox knows his owner, and the ass his master's crib. But Israel does not know, my people do not consider. A sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken Yahuwah. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They are gone away backward. Why should you be stricken any more? You will revolt no more and more. The whole head is sick and the whole heart faint. From the sole of the foot even unto the head there is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and putrefying sores. They have not been closed, neither bound up, neither mollified with ointment. Your country is desolate. Your cities are burned with fire. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence, and it is desolate, as overthrown by strangers. And the daughter of Zion is left as a cottage in a vineyard, as a lodge in a garden of cucumbers, as a besieged city. Except Yahuwah Sevaot had left unto us a very small remnant, we should have been as Sidon, and we should have been like unto Amorah. Hear the word of Yahuwah, ye rulers of Sidon. Give ear unto the Torah of our Elohim, ye people of Amorah. To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me, says Yahuwah? I am full of the burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed beasts, and I delight not in the blood of bullocks or of lambs or of the he-goats. When ye come to appear before me, who has required this at your hand to tread my courts? Bring no more an oblation of evil incense. It is an abomination to me. No longer proclaim the Sabbath and the feast and the festival. They are in vain. New moons and feasts are odious to my soul and are the burden I weary of lifting. And when you spread forth your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Yeah, when you make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. Wash yourself, make yourself clean. Put away the evil of your doing before my eyes. Cease to do evil. Learn to do well. Seek judgment. Relieve the oppressed. Judge the fatherless. Plead for the widow. Come now and let us reason together, says Yahuwah. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. If ye be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured with the sword. For the mouth of Yahuwah has spoken. How is the faithful city become a harlot? It was full of judgment, righteousness lodged in it, but now murderers. Your silver is become dross, your wine mixed with water. Your princes are rebellious and companions of thieves. Everyone loves gifts and follows after rewards. They judge not the fatherless, neither does the cause of the widow come upon them. Therefore says Adonai, Yahuwah Sevaot, the mighty one of Israel, I will ease me of my adversaries and avenge me of my enemies. And I will turn my hand upon you and purely purge away your dross and take away all your tin. And I will restore your judges as at first, and your counselors as at the beginning. Afterward, you shall be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. Zion shall be redeemed with judgment, and her converts with righteousness. And the destruction of the transgressors and of the sinners shall be together, and they that forsake Yahuwah shall be consumed. For they shall be ashamed of the oaks which you have desired, and you shall be confounded for the gardens that ye have chosen. For you shall be as an oak whose leaf fades, and as a garden that has no water. And the strong shall be as tow, and the maker as a spark. And they shall both burn together, and none shall quench them. That's chapter 1.
All right. What stood out to you, Roy? I'll let you go first since you read anything. You don't have to understand the whole chapter, but if something stood out, what was it?
Righteousness. The fact that obedience was paramount. Well, I mean, we could play religion all day. We could quote scripture all day. But if we don't walk the way the Most High walked, his standard, not my standard, not no man's standard. The Most High has one standard for everybody. And if we don't meet that standard, he's not playing. He's not playing with his word and obedience. He is merciful, but overall, we need to do what we have to do, is obedience. We could do Shabbat. We could do the high holy day. We could do all these things. I could grow my beard. You know what I'm saying? I could count the days. Okay, I cook, and I do all this. But if the heart is not what he wants, with obedience, with love, something missing. So that's what I got. I mean, there's so much more. That chapter is full of a whole bunch of stuff, but that's the overall message I got from that first chapter.
That was very good. I agree. Amen. Hallelujah. Anybody else want to share anything that they got from the chapter? Milo, go ahead.
There's a few things. So in verse 1, it mentions the time period of where Yeshayahu, son of Amoz, was walking. And some of these kings like Uziyahu, Yotham, Achaz, and Yasikiyahu or Hezekiah, those are found in 2 Kings. I'm kind of finding them between chapters 15 and 20, just to give background for that. But I wanted to get into a few verses. 2 Kings 17:5, with the cross-reference. I believe this is a right cross-reference for verse 8 when it says, "And the daughter of Sion is left as a cottage in a vineyard, as a lodge in a garden of cucumbers, as a besieged city." And I believe that this is referencing 2 Kings 17:5, where it mentions, then the king of Asher came up throughout all the land and went up to Shamaron and besieged it 3 years. Or I'll put that as a question. I'm wondering if that is talking about that besiegement. But in regards to just the wickedness and the sin that was coming about, in verse 10 of this first chapter says, "Hear the word of Yahuwah, you rulers of Sodom. Give ear unto the Torah of your Elohim, you people of Amorah." Now, he's not actually talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. He's talking about his own land. And it has me going to Ezekiel 16, verses 46 to 52, which reads, "And your elder sister is Shamaron or Samaria, she and her daughters that dwell at your left hand, and your young sister that dwells at your right hand is Sodom and her daughters. Yet have you not walked after their ways, nor done after their abominations. But as if it was a very little thing, you were corrupted more than they in all your ways. As I live, says Adonai Yahuwah, Sodom your sister has not done, she nor her daughters, as you have done, you and your daughters. Behold, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. Pride, fullness of bread, abundance of idleness was in her, and in her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hands of the poor and needy, and they were haughty, and committed abomination before me. Therefore I took them away as I saw. Neither has Shamaron committed half of your sins, but you have multiplied your abominations more than they, and have justified your sisters in all your abominations which you have done. You also, which have judged your sisters, bear your own shame for your sins that you have committed more abominable than they are more righteous than you. Yea, be you confounded also, and bear your shame, and that you have justified your sisters. And I don't believe that Yahuwah is actually saying that Sodom and Gomorrah were justified and they were actually righteous, but that's to show the comparison, almost like a hyperbole of how bad Yehuda, Yerushalayim, and even Israel has gone astray from the ways and the commands of the Most High. So I just want to give those cross references. I'll try to find some other ones.
I found it interesting that Yahuwah calls his chosen people Sodom and Gomorrah in verse 10. Obviously, that doesn't mean that genetically they change and they become Gentiles, but the concept is that just like his descendants of Jacob, the physical descendants of Jacob, can be assimilated or identified as Gentiles, out of covenant, people that are rebellious, the same way that Gentiles who are physically Gentiles can actually be assimilated as Israel because of obedience and faith. So, but here we see the opposite going on, where he's actually calling his chosen people a very, very wicked place, Sodom and Gomorrah. So that's pretty bad. Go ahead.
I want to give a cross reference with that in regards to the name. In Revelations 11:8, it says, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Mitzrayim, where also our Adonai was crucified. Even all the way in Revelations, he's still referencing it as Sodom, Mitzrayim, places of bondage, which is not what it's Israel, but it's a bad in that bad sense. That I was mentioning that.
Nice. Even though they were physically in Yerushalayim, there we got Revelations calling where Yahusha was crucified again, like Sodom and Gomorrah. That's pretty strong. That's because everybody was rebelling, right? His own people betrayed him and gave him to the Romans and stuff. All right. You got something else? Go ahead.
In verse 13 of Yeshayahu says, bring no more vain oblations. Incense is an abomination unto me. New moons, your Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies, I cannot away with. Iniquity, even the solemn assembly. And then it's like some people may take this
He did away with the feasts.
Yeah, some people may take it to that sense. But he's but no, I wanted to get into the cross-reference of Proverbs 15:8 to kind of shed a little bit more light on this. Proverbs 15:8 says, the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to Yahuwah, but the prayer of the upright is his delight. So a wicked person can sacrifice, right? But even to Yahuwah, it's considered an abomination. It's the wickedness. It's the iniquity that's attached to it. I think someone else was mentioning, I mean, we can just do things just to do it. But if your heart is not before Yahuwah, if you're not actually walking uprightly, Yahuwah sees it the same as a wicked person doing something abominable to them. So, yep.
All right. I see Brian with the hand up. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking about I was thinking about the heart as well. Like it's in Matthew 15:8, it says that you worship me with your mouth and honor me with your lips, but your heart is far from me. And how God looks at, always admonishes his people to circumcise the foreskin of your heart. And that's where your salvation lies. And I was also thinking about 2 Timothy. It talks about they have a form of godliness but deny the power thereof. From such turn away. And in that verse, when it says deny, what it says denying is actually in the Greek, it means reject. So these people are rejecting God basically by having a form of godliness, doing all the sacrifices and all that, but their hearts and their actions and the fruit of their loins and their body is actually worshiping other Elohim. And in my own life, it's like I can relate to, like, when I was years ago in the church, basically going through the motions of going to church with my parents and going through the motions of going to the altar and praying, getting your hands laid on, but my heart wasn't really in it. I was just going through the motions, and I thank God, because it's like the truth is so powerful that later on in life, when the truth was made known to me, my heart for the first time was actually circumcised and made right. And so no longer was I just perpetrating a fraud. I was actually wanted to love God, wanted to serve him and find out how to serve him and how to honor him and worship him in Ruach and in truth. And so, yeah, it's one of those things, like, we can be drunk, spiritually drunk, like the children of Israel was, but we always have to remain sober, remain vigilant, and watch out for, beware of their mistakes, because they're an example to us, because we can wind up in the same condition and not even realize it, and be among the number where Yah says, "Depart from me, you workers of iniquity, I know you not." And so that's all I wanted to add.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Brother Rick, you got chapter number 2.
Yes, sir. One thing I'd like to point out about that before I do, though, is the parallels of what that time was. Scripture says that we're going to be, the end generation is going to be a lot like Sodom and Gomorrah, days of Noah. We kind of see all that right now in our time, where it also says here that in 23, your rulers are stubborn and companions of thieves. Everyone loves bribes and runs after rewards. They do not defend the fatherless, nor does the cause of the widow reach them. You know, that describes the time and the day that we're living in to the T. And I also, what Milo brought up there about the new moons, it's kind of interesting, because we're in this appointed times, and these new moons and these Sabbaths that he's talking about, that were abomination. Why would he call them abominations, these? Because they're doing them on different days? Because they're doing them outside of his ways? I mean, you know, off of the different calendars that they've injected when they came out of Babylon, you know, where they changed all of that understanding. So when you get to that point where it's flipping, you know, everything changes all around in here for us. If we really look at that, what is that talking about during that time? You know, we got to get that right ourselves. That's why we're trying to find this calendar so bad, you know, because we want to get back to where we're not an abomination. I don't want to be an abomination. Do you? So that's all I really wanted to say before I read that, but it looks like Terry's got her hand up.
Sorry, I can't find the little hand on my screen to hit. I too wanted to make a comment on verse 13 to go along with Rick's thought. I am unable to bear unrighteousness and the assembly, and I cross-referenced it to Isaiah 66:3. He actually likens their unrighteousness to offering swine's blood on the altar. And then Jeremiah 7:9-10 says, will you still murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, burn incense to Baal, which we know is the word Lord, and go after other gods that you have not known, and then come and stand before me in the house, which is called by my name, and say, we are delivered, only to go on doing all these abominations? When Brother read Isaiah 1, the first thing that came to my mind was, Father, thank you for Brother D saying no Lord, no God, Mike saying no Christian, because those are abomination of words. They really are. And so could we today be guilty of this swine blood abomination by using pagan words in our true worship?
I don't. Thank you, Terry. I just want to say, I think what the text was saying here was regarding injustice and not caring for 21. It says, where is it? Yeah, no, going back, verse 17. All right, or 16, it says, wash yourselves, make yourself clean, put away the evil of your doings from before my eyes, cease to do evil, learn to do well, seek justice. He's telling us what it is. Seek justice, reveal the oppressed, judge the fatherless, plead for the widow. I think it wasn't necessarily an issue about what we're dealing with today, how to properly pronounce things. I don't think it had to do with what the right timing is. This has to do with unfairness, injustice. When your brother is struggling or your brother is poor or in need, you treat him like a heathen, and showing fairness, favoring some brothers and sisters over others when it has to do with moral issues of conflict. So I think that's what was going on. Obviously, idolatry and sexual immorality, these are big things that were going on, you know what I'm saying? Which makes getting the right date and pronunciations looks really a lot smaller of an issue than what these people were doing, prostituting, going to prostitute temples and, marrying pagans and defiling the temple. So that's really, I think, contextually, that's what was going on during this time. And this is what's causing Yahuwah to cause a pagan nation to come in and ransack the set apart, place of Yahuwah. So I digress. Go ahead, Terry.
I appreciate that's right. That is in context. You're right. But I was just thinking, not to change context, but isn't the sacrifice of our lips is what we do today? And so we can't do the sacrifices. And hopefully when we see someone poor or needing in help, yes, today we can help them. But I can't remember the name of the brother earlier. We had a wonderful chat, but isn't it true that today, even though Satan doesn't use, he uses the same thing, there's nothing new on.
Yeah, I hear what she's saying. I'm not trying to say that, we should call after other gods and things like that. But what I'm saying is I'm just trying to stick with what the text is saying. And this is what the text is talking about. It's not talking about the things that, in my opinion, some of the smaller issues that we deal with today, in the Messianic or Hebrew roots community, coming up with different dates. What's the true name of the Father? These guys were literally calling upon Baal, another deity. They weren't saying master just as a title. They were actually calling upon another deity. And the idolatry and sexual immorality was really, that's all I'm saying. But as far as the topic of getting into, what's right and what's wrong on other topics, I mean, that's a good topic too. But I just don't think it's what chapter 1 is really referring to. But with that being said, let's go on to chapter number 2 and see what we got going on there. Brother Rick, take it away. Sorry, Terry, your reception got frozen. You froze up. But I don't disagree with you. I just wanted to say the whole what comes out of our mouth, having a pure language and not calling upon other mighty ones, that's definitely a true Torah and teaching that Yahuwah tells us to do. Go ahead, Brother Rick.
All right. The word that Yeshayahu, the son of Amoz, saw concerning Yehuda and Jerusalem. And it shall be in the later days that the mountain of the house of Yahuwah is established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it. And many people shall come and say, come, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahuwah, to the house of the Elohim of Jacob. And let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion comes forth the Torah, and the word of Yahuwah from Jerusalem. And he shall judge between the nations, and shall reprove many peoples. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither teach battle anymore. A house of Jacob, come and let us walk in the light of Yahuwah. For you have forsaken your people, the house of Jacob, because they have been filled from the east and the practice magic like the Philistines, and they are pleased with the children of foreigners. And their land is filled with silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. And their land is filled with horses, and there is no end to their chariots. And their land is filled with idols. They bow themselves to the work of their own hands, to what their own fingers have made. And the lowly bow down, and the high is humbled. Therefore, you do not bear them. Enter into the rock and hide in the dust, because of the reverence of Yahuwah and the splendor of his excellency. The lofty look of man shall be humbled, and the pride of man shall be bowed down, and Yahuwah alone shall be exalted in that day. For Yahuwah of hosts has a day against all that is proud and lofty, against all that is lifted up, and so that it is brought low, and against all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up, and against all the oaks of Bashan, and against all the high mountains, and against all the hills that are lifted up, and against every lofty tower, and against every strong wall, and against all the ships of Tarish, and against all the desirable craft. And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the pride of men shall be brought low. And Yahuwah alone shall be exalted in that day. And the idols completely pass away, and they shall go into the holes of the rocks, and into the caves of the earth, from dread of Yahuwah and the splendor of his excellency, when he arises to shake the earth mightily. In that day man shall throw away his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made, each for himself to worship, to the moles and the bats, to go into the clefts of the rock, and into the crags of the rugged rocks, because of the reverence of Yahuwah and the splendor of his excellency. When he arises, he shakes the earth mightily. Cease from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for in what is he to be reckoned upon?
Hallelujah. What you got, Brother Rick?
Hooah!
What stands out to you, Brother Rick? I'll let you start. Anything from the chapter, anything.
Well, guess we got to stick to the script here. Basically, what I see is what's really the biggest part is just basically his complacency with these idols that man has made and what they have made to represent him or their image of him, or he just has a detest for what man has done. And at some point it's telling us this is almost like prophecy here to what's going to come, that they're going to be laying all this stuff down. They're going to stop and cease all this foolishness because they're going to see who he truly is at that moment. And that's going to really be a moment of awakening for most of mankind when that day happens. Because it's going to be like that. What Matthew says, when they thinking they doing all this stuff for the right reasons, and they really aren't. Tells them to go away. I never knew you, you workers of lawlessness. So that's what I'm seeing in these two last chapters, is talking a lot about the wickedness, the evils of this earth, of mankind, and he's also got his talking about his righteous ones in here too, though. So we're in the midst of all of this, and we're important. We're very important to his plan in all of this. So I think this is telling us what to keep our eyes open to, what we're going to be seeing, what we're already seeing, if not. But that's what I see so far.
Hallelujah. Good stuff. Anybody else? Anybody else? Brother Roy, and then Terry.
Yeah, what stood out, a lot of things stood out, but number 2, when it goes and it says, and it shall come to pass in the last days. Point of reference, last days. And then it continues that the mountain of Yahuwah's house shall be established in the top of the mountains and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow into it. All nations shall flow into it. Okay, he's talking about the last days, talking about I'm connecting 2 with Daniel, the kingdom of Yahuwah coming. Okay, obviously that's what it's talking about. And number 3, many people shall go and say, come, let us go where? To the mountain of where? Of who? Of Yahuwah, specifically. Identification of the Elohim, identification of the nation of the people, right? People say, oh, God is everywhere. Everywhere is God. Yeah, kind of, but you have to identify who you're talking to when you're using that G-O-D. We know it's the Yahuwah, right? And then just the judgment, how it's full, but I just wanted to put the emphasis on this chapter, how it's really talking about the last day. And everything else goes into nations and how he's going to deal with nations and how he's going to be exalted and how they're going to feed him and how they're going to be hiding and how when they see him, they're going to throw away the idols. Why? Because they're going to know the idols is not no Elohim, since he's been saying it from the beginning. So when they see him come, they're going to be like, whoa. I just leave that emphasis there.
Nice. You touched on one I wanted to touch on, Roy. So I'm gonna bounce off of you for a little bit. Then I'll let. No, my bad. Terry was next after you. No, yeah, because it will make sense to bounce off of Roy real quick, and I'll let you go, Terry. But just a cross reference for you. I like verse 2. I talked with Mike about this. So the temple. There's debates in the Messianic Hebrew, whatever you want to call it, faith in Messiah and Torah. We have debates. Some people think there's no need of a temple no more, a physical, literal, earthly temple. It's been destroyed and it's done away with. And then, they believe that we now substitute the temple. We're all stones, and they spiritualize everything, right? However, this seems very physical and literal to me. I take it very literally because I don't think if you interpret this to be spiritual, then it would say it shall happen in latter days that the people of Yahuwah shall be established on the top of the mountains and shall be raised above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to the people. And many people shall come and say, come, let us go to the people of Yahuwah. Okay? It might make sense to some people. They're like, yeah, that makes sense to me. All right, but if we go to Micah chapter, I think Micah 4 verse 1 is a cross-reference regarding this last day event. It says, but in latter days, it will happen that the mountain of Yahuwah's temple will be established on the top of the mountains, and it will be exalted above the hills, and peoples will stream to it. Many nations will go and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahuwah and to the house of the Elohim of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. So right here, I see very clearly, it's a topic I enjoy talking about. I love talking about how the covenant is not done away with at all until heaven and earth passes away. Everything is perfectly in alignment with Yahuwah's timing, and what he has going on right now is what he decided to go on right now. There's no temple right now. There's no Levitical priesthood, but all of that stuff is going to be reestablished. However, there is going to be a phony, a faker, a pretender that is going to sit in the temple and claim to be Elohim. Even though this has been done, I think Nero is his name, did it back before around 70 AD when he destroyed the temple. And a lot of people assimilate these passages with that. But the problem is, you don't have nation not going against nation. You don't have this kind of peace and all this other stuff that these passages in Isaiah chapter 2 is talking about. So this is definitely talking about a future time period that has not happened yet. And I think it's a beautiful a beautiful future hope that we share. With that being said, I'll pass it off to Terry. Go ahead, sister. And then I see you, Mike.
Thank you. I appreciated what Roy had said. Basically, that's what I was going to comment on, that and the fact that Yahuwah mentioned pride twice in verse 11 and verse 12. And so for Yahuwah of hosts has a day, we know that day is coming, against all that is proud and lofty. I know for me, I came from a divorced household. My mama raised a woman, basically, you don't need no man. So yes, I do. And I want to be under the headship of men. And so I have very little, unfortunately, I have very little contact with her. She's an atheist. She doesn't want the scriptures. But pride was something that was put into me because my mom's on her third or fourth marriage. So I know that this is something that we all have to work on daily. Because look at poor Moshe, the meekest man in the world, and yet his pride of saying, we bring you water. I mean, you know, I shudder to think. I shudder to think what will happen to us.
That's a great point. Good to reflect on that. True on that. Yeah. Brother Mike.
D, my man. So you know, yeah, I love you, bro. So you already know this is the first conversation me and D had, and I will say this, D. Remember how scattered-minded I was when we were going through this? I couldn't get my stuff together. I'm gonna say here, you're the one that read it, I believe, the first time. Maybe I did, but hearing you read it just now, I'm gonna have to retract what I said, bro. I really am, because I was scattered-minded. Right now, that did not, even to my wife, that sounded straight up like it was us. It even, the first verse you said, it even says that they will come to the people. It didn't say the temple. It was talking about the temple in the beginning. Like, if you don't mind, just real quick, reading the first verse you just read, just if you don't mind.
The Isaiah?
Yeah.
Okay, the way that I read it, with your interpretation of the temple being the spiritual.
Don't hit me with that, your interpretation. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm kidding.
It doesn't say that. All right, I'm gonna read it that way again. So it says, "And it shall happen in latter days that the mountain of the mountain of Yahuwah's people shall be established on the top of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills, and all nations shall flow to them. And many peoples shall come and say, Come, let us go to the people of Yahuwah, let us go to the mountain of Yahuwah and to the people of the Elohim of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion the Torah shall go forth, and the word of Yahuwah from Yerushalayim."
So all that is referring to people. Never once does it even mention temple, building, castle, house.
No. By the way, I'm reading it with that. And that's not what the text says. I was just.
That's right. You gave me something. So give me what you gave me, that because you got to bring me back to that. So what was it?
This is what it actually says. I'm gonna read what it actually says. It says, "And it shall happen in latter days that the mountain of Yahuwah's house shall be established on the top of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it." Not them. It says to it. "And many peoples shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahuwah and to the house of the Elohim of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion the Torah shall go forth, and the word of Yahuwah from Yerushalayim."
So I'm not going to do it at this moment because I'm going to let somebody else go. But I'm going to take this to the interlinear, which I should have done when we talked.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this: it says the place that he dwells. Well, what house does he dwell in? Because even Yahusha talks about where he dwells in, which is us. And then even Yahusha, which we are talking about here, even calls his own body a temple, which is the house that we're talking about. And again, Moshe, this is the Tanakh, that you're reading from. Even Moshe, which is the people and the prophets wrote from, was the Tanakh. Yahusha says, how are you going to believe me if you didn't believe, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but if you didn't believe Moshe when he wrote about me, everything the Torah and the Tanakh was written about Yahusha. So if Yahusha says, y'all really talking about the temple, but I'm telling you my body is the temple. The Pharisees said, oh, how you going to tear down this temple and build it in 3 days? It took us so long to build it. Yahusha, the scripture is about me. It's not about this physical stuff. The physical is so you can get a glimpse of the spiritual. I'm telling you, you're going to tear this temple down, and in 3 days I will rebuild this temple. There's a reason why he's talking about this temple, because the temple that he's talking about is his temple. It's his temple. His temple. We are Yahusha's body. His temple. So he said this verse, right? He explained it right then and there. He just put his temple and his body. Are we not the body? So therefore, that alone, him saying, I am what Moshe wrote. I'm what Moshe wrote. So if you want to really see what Moshe's talking about, listen to what I said. You're going to destroy this temple, but I'm going to rebuild body, this temple, right? And he rebuilt it with us. So remember, because even both of us had that confusion about how the end, we know Yahusha is our high priest in the order of Melchizedek, but even as Paul said, he cannot be a priest here on earth in the order, in the priesthood and the Levitical line. So we both were like, we're going to have to do some more study because we don't understand. It seems like there's going to be both, but with the understanding, because like I said, I was scatter-minded and I wasn't on my stuff like I should have been. I am holding to the body, the temple being the body. I am holding to that because it's what Yahusha, Moshe didn't give it to us, Yahusha gave it to us. And then, you know, Paul confirmed that. But like I said, what Paul said, Yahusha cannot be a high priest here on earth. He said that flat out. And again, Interlinear says the same thing. He cannot be the high priest. So just like there's a change. So yeah, I'm not gonna go off topic. So that's where I'm at. Yeah.
All right. I appreciate it. I just want to say one thing. In that passage, Yahusha never said that he's replacing the physical temple with himself or a spiritual version of himself. The passage made it very clear he was speaking about his own body and not that physical temple. If he would have said, I'm talking about my body and the temple, or I'm talking about my body and the temple as far as the destruction, but I'm only talking about my body regarding the restoration. He didn't say any of those things. That's all interpretation, that's all commentary, and that's all theology.
I got you, but let me say this. Again, Yahusha said Moshe wrote the Torah, right? He also said,
right.
He wrote about me. Who wrote about the temple? Moshe.
No, wait. Time out. You just added to what he said. It did not say he wrote about the temple. It said he wrote about me.
Leviticus. No, Moshe wrote Leviticus.
Time out. You're saying he wrote about me, and then you're saying Yahusha said that he wrote about the temple. Yahusha never said he wrote about the temple. He never said that Moses wrote about the temple being me.
No. Moshe or Yahusha said Moshe wrote about him.
Sure, right? He sure did.
We also know that Yahusha. Okay, so I see where you're going with this. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's stick to what part of Moses' words were about Yahusha. He's the Messiah. He's the coming King. He's Emmanuel, Elohim with us. Torah. He was born of a virgin. He's our. You know what I'm saying? He came to bring good news.
He is the whole Torah.
Yeah.
Everything Moshe wrote was about him.
Absolutely.
Including the body, which represents the temple, right? I mean, we can't deny that, right?
No, there's a lot of stuff Moshe wrote about that was not fulfilled. So to say that everything
I know that
wrote is fulfilled in Yahusha is to say that everything's been fulfilled. You see what I'm saying? I gotta let somebody else.
But that's not what I said. I didn't say that.
Well, what you are saying is you're implying aspects of what Yahusha said to what you want to take from it without letting Yahusha say that. That's what I'm trying to say.
He referred to the body, his body, which he calls us his body, as the temple.
Sure.
So that does come from Yahusha.
Yeah, it does. But Yahusha never said, time out. It
was only the man who were now obeying.
Mike, let me speak. However, Yahusha never said, There was no replacement theology in Yahushua's mindset. Replacement theology comes from Christianity. He never said, I'm replacing the physical temple. There's no more physical temple. If he did, then I would stand corrected if you could show me where he says that. But there's no replacement theology. Nobody's replacing anything. There's still a Levitical priesthood. There's still a Davidic covenant. There's still a Levitical covenant that is established until heaven and earth is passed away. That's what I'm trying to say. I got to let somebody else go, Mike. Mike, I got to let somebody else go. My wife wants to speak. Go ahead, Mimo.
All right, I wanted to respond to something and then also give some scripture. Mike had mentioned that Messiah said that when he was mentioned about this body shall go down, be rebuilt in 3 days, and then he correlated how we are the body. Then in that aspect, we would have to say that we as a body, we're supposed to die in 3 days and rise. If we're going to take the whole analogy, it has to be tuned to the entire verse. You get what I'm trying to say? He was physically talking about his own body, and we have to understand that analogies can be used in different ways multiple times. Like, for example, when it talks about the olive tree, in one instance it's talking about Israel, another instance is talking about the nation. So they don't always mean the same thing. But I wanted to clear, I think the scripture is going to say something for itself. In Revelation 21 verses, I'm going to read 1 to 5 and then I'm going to jump. So verse 1 says, and I saw a renewed heaven and a renewed earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, Yehukanan, saw the holy city, or a set-apart city, renewed Yerushalayim, coming down from Yahuwah out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her man. So this is not the people, this is a city he's seen come down. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of Yahuwah is with men, and he will tabernacle with them, and they shall be his people, and Yahuwah himself shall be with them, and their Elohim. And Yahuwah shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. And he that sat upon the throne said, behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, write, for these words are true and faithful. And in verse 22 of the same chapter, Revelations 21, it says, and I saw no temple therein, for Yahuwah Elohim Sevuot and the Lamb are the temple of it. So I'm just going to throw that out there and to however you guys wish to discuss.
Somehow there's different metaphors being talked about. Sometimes we're called the body of Yahusha. There's a physical, literal temple, but then we see Yahuwah is the temple. You know, I don't know if I want to say I'm Yahuwah, but it says, and I saw no dwelling place in it, for Yahuwah El Shaddai is its dwelling place and the Lamb. I mean, unless you think we morphosize into something spiritual, I would like to believe that we're still going to be individual bodies, individual people doing individual things and enjoying eternity with Yahuwah. I think we're going to be working. We're going to be, rejoicing, singing. There's going to be a tree of life. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot. 23 says, and the city had no need of sun nor of the moon to shine in it, for the esteem of Elohim lightened it, and the Lamb is its lamp. So I don't know. That's good. I thought that was a good point. Sister Terry, and then I'm not sure who's next, but I see Brian's hand is up.
Yeah, Ezekiel's temple is for the future. And in Zechariah chapter 14, it says, and it shall be that all who are left from all the nations which came up against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to bow themselves to the sovereign Yahuwah of hosts and to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. We know he's going to have a temple to set in during that reign. So there will be a literal temple at a future time, his temple that he's going to build, or whoever's going to build for him.
Amen. Good stuff. Brian.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking too. It's important. I think both you and Mike, you and Mike have made good points, because the millennial reign of Yahushua, I believe there may be a physical temple, because it talks about how the nation is going to flow through Yerushalayim, learn of her ways. But when heaven and earth passes away, at the end of the millennial reign of Yahusha, that's when the New Jerusalem's going to come down. And that city is not going to have a temple, because like what Milo wrote, what read, the Lamb Yahushua is the temple. And it's interesting too, like when I don't know who mentioned it earlier, but I think it was Mike mentioned that Yahushua is going to rebuild his temple in 3 days. Well, we know too that a day of the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is 1 day. So from the time of Yahushua being crucified to the time of the New Jerusalem is 3,000 years, which is after the 3,000 years, the earth is going to pass away, and that's 3 days with Yah. So it's interesting that we're experiencing 3 days of Yahuwah, where he's rebuilding the temple, and then after that, the heaven and earth is going to pass away, and it's like his body was physically raised in 3 days, 3 24-hour days, and he's raising up his temple, his spiritual temple, in like a 3-day period of his 1,000-year 3 days, which is 3,000 years. So, yeah, I think that's it's a little bit. I thought that's interesting too. So.
Thanks, Brian. We'll see about that 3,000-year breakdown. We'll see. Brother Mike, let's not beat a dead horse, Brother Mike, but go ahead. I'll let you get some more in there. Go ahead.
I just wanted to be able to at least reply. So, first off, Paul, again, 2 witnesses establishes matter. That's Torah. You got Yahushua calling his body the temple. Also, you got Paul telling us our body is his temple. I mean, that's enough for me. But again, you said you don't believe in replacement theology. Neither do I. Before Levitical order was what? The Melchizedek. Yahushua was there from the beginning, correct? There was sacrifices before there was ever a temple. We don't need a temple for sacrifices, only an altar. So temple does not mean sacrifices does not mean we need altars. So even in the millennium, because that's something I forgot, I wasn't even thinking about either in our conversation before, we don't need a temple for sacrifices in the millennial reign. Only the Pharisees and the people who are not keeping the actual Torah, like the people over there now, who are not actually keeping the Torah, they're adding and taking away from it, were the ones who were assuming that Yahushua was talking about a physical temple when he was talking about his body. And again, it's the same people today over there, those Jews over there who are trying to rebuild another temple, thinking that they need a temple, when Yahushua said, it's not this physical temple, this is going to be destroyed. It's my body. And then Paul confirmed, I believe in Paul when he said, our bodies are Yah's temple. That's the point. Never did you need a temple for a sacrifice, only an altar, just as Abraham's sacrifice. Matter of fact, the first covenant was sacrificed on it was blood ratified on an altar without a temple, right? The sprinkling of the blood on the book of the covenant and on the people. It was done on an altar that he made right there that Yah commanded him. No temple needed. So the temple was never needed is the point. We are the temple. That's the whole point. Now that we have Yahushua to dwell into us, his spirit to dwell into us, we are the temple. That was the original goal. But because they sinned, like I said, I'm not going to. So that's I just want to rebuttal with that. It's not replacement theology. The Melchizedek order was before Levitical. So to say you're not in replacement theology, therefore you should not consider Levitical being existing, because Yahushua is our high priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. As Paul said, there cannot be Yahushua. He says Yahushua cannot be our high priest in the Levitical order. So therefore, how can he come back as a high priest if we're still in the order of the Levitical? We can't. That's the point. So So it's not replacement theology at all. It's going back to the original, just like we believe. It's cyclical, just like Hasatan's plans to go back to the same thing that he was trying to do, same as Yah's. They're both trying to go back to their both original plan, because the original plan was perfect from the beginning. Yah's was. So in the beginning we see the Melchizedek order. The Levitical was because sin came into that play.
All right. It is cyclical, but it is replacement theology. I'm going to tell you why it's replacement theology. It's because when Yahuwah establishes a covenant and he gives a timeline for that covenant, it's established whether you like it, whether we like it, whether we think it's needed or not, Yahuwah put it in place. And Yahuwah put the Levitical priesthood in place, and he gave a timeline for it. One of the timeline is until heaven and earth passes away. One of the timelines is forever. One of the timelines is perpetual. One of the timelines in Jeremiah chapter 33 is that if you can change the covenant that he established with the day and with the night, that they would not come in their season, then you can change the covenant that he established with David, that somebody would sit on his throne and with his Levitical priests who are his ministers. There's a timeline to this particular covenant. As much as we don't like it or it doesn't seem to make sense, it's a covenant that he established. And until heaven and earth passes away, that covenant is still in effect. That covenant is still a covenant. So how that all works in the future, we will see. But as of right now, that hasn't taken place yet. But when you say that has taken place right now, that the Levitical priesthood is done away with, when heaven and earth hasn't passed away, that becomes replacement theology. I just want to be clear. That's what I'm trying to say. And I know what you're trying to say, but again, we're not at that point yet where heaven and earth passed away. We're not at Revelation 21 yet. We'll get there. But I think there's a lot to happen before we get to Revelation chapter 21. And there's 1,000 years that we're going to be on this earth. And we're going to have righteous judges of Yisrael, rulers, teachers, going all over the world. And we're going to have people coming to the city of Yerushalayim, a physical place that still points forward to the substance. It's still a shadow pointing forward. But it's a shadow pointing to something that's in heaven. But in Revelation 21, what's in heaven will come down. Then I think what you're saying will make sense. But until that happens, I can't say that's the case yet. Anybody else? No? We can go to chapter 3. Anybody else want to talk about a different aspect of chapter 2? That was a good run. I had a feeling we were going to get into that because me and Mike had discussed that. That's like first discussion we had. By the way, if anybody wants to study that topic, I think the topic would be the difference between the covenant of the book of the law versus the book of the covenant. I think that would be the topic. There's a doctrine out there. People think that there's a difference, and Yahusha came and did away with a lot of the commandments and instructions that are in Torah because it was part of a particular covenant. So, but Mike might have a distinct, interpretation of that. But anyway, just for your own studies, if you guys want to go deeper into that. Chapter 3, who wants to read? Mike, you want to read chapter 3? Chapter 3, Isaiah chapter 3. And I did a discussion with a brother called Brother Tay on my YouTube channel. If you want to look it up, I think I called it the Covenant, Book of the Covenant versus Book of the Law.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, 1 second. She's flipping through. I was just listening to y'all's beautiful voices read it, so okay, I got it. Chapter 3. This is New King James. Not by choice. For behold, Yahuwah of hosts takes away from Yerushalayim and from Yehuda the stocks and the store, the whole supply of bread and the whole supply of water, the mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet, and the diviner and the elder, the captain of 50 and the honorable man, the counselor and the skillful artisan, and the expert enchanter. I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. The people will be oppressed, everyone by another and everyone by his neighbor. The children will be insolent toward the elder, and the babes toward the honorable. When a man takes hold of his brother in the house of his father, saying, you have clothing, you be our ruler. And let these ruins be under your power. In that day he will protest, saying, I cannot cure your ills. For in my house neither food nor clothing do not make me a ruler of the people. For Yerushalayim stumbled and Yehuda is fallen, because their tongue and their doings are against Yahuwah, to provoke the eyes of his esteem. The look on their countenance witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They do not hide it. Woe to their soul, for they have brought.
I'll go ahead and take over from here. Verse 10, say to the righteous, it is well. for they eat the fruit of their doings. Verse 11, woe to the wrong, evil, for the reward of his hand is done to him. My people, youths, exert pressure on them, and women rule over them. O my people, your leaders lead you astray and swallow the way of your paths. 13, Yahuwah shall stand up to plead and is standing to judge the peoples. Yahuwah enters into judgment with the elders of his people and its heads. It is you who have eaten up the vineyard. The plunder of the poor is in your houses. There's that injustice there, you know, the welfare system, people profiting, you know, like in America, the welfare system is so, if you guys knew how much money the people make that are on the top of the corporate system of the welfare system in this country, you guys would be disgusted. You guys are like millionaires. Verse 16, and Yahuwah says, because the daughters of Zion are haughty and walk with outstretched necks and seductive eyes, walking and mincing as they go, making and jingling with their feet. Therefore Yahuwah shall smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and Yahuwah expose their nakedness. In that day Yahuwah takes away the finery of the anklets and the headbands and the crescents, the pendants, the bracelets, and the veils, the headdresses, and the leg ornaments, and the sashes, and the perfume bottles, and the amulets, the rings, and the nose jewels, the costly robes, and the cloaks, and the shawls, and the purses, the mirrors, and the fine linen, and the turbans, and the large veils. And it shall be, instead of a sweet fragrance, a smell of decay, and instead of a belt, a rope, and instead of well-set hair, baldness, and instead of a festal robe, a girding of sackcloth, and branding instead of loveliness. Your men shall fall by the sword, and your strength in battle, and her gates shall lament and mourn, and she deserted shall sit on the ground. So a lot of bad news here for disobedience to the Torah. I would like to say I do believe, even though a lot of this has to do with, like we were talking about, stuff that hasn't happened yet, there's a lot of this stuff that has happened, right? Because very shortly after this, or like my wife was pointing out, during this time, Yehuda's being taken over for a certain amount of years by other nations, you know, so they're experiencing the defeat. They're experiencing other nations coming in and destroying their places and taking over their lands and their food and the agriculture and stuff like that, and the economy there. And we also know that in history that's happened a lot, especially when Yehuda went into Babylonian captivity. Then you got the Maccabean period, right, where they take the temple back, take the land back. Then you got Messiah's time when he's born under like a Roman power. You know, they're, even though they're in the land, they're in Jerusalem, they're still over Roman power. They're paying taxes to Rome and things like that. And then eventually 70 AD or so, the temple gets destroyed and they're all scattered again. And then supposedly 1950 whatever, the nation is for whatever reason, I'm just going to say this, at least it's identified as a Torah observant land that's supposed to obey the Torah. You know, the people that are there might not be the real Israelites, but at least it's been called Israel, and it's been called, it's been given a territory that at least part of it does belong to the geographic location that does exist in scripture. So some of this stuff has taken place. All this oppression, all this bad news and stuff has taken place, but perhaps there's still more to come. Perhaps there's still more to come. Those are my thoughts from this chapter. Anybody else? Sister Terry, go for it.
I just appreciate the fact that true believers, sisters today, wearing headdresses, wearing scarves, as in submission to the male leadership and to the angels. here in verse 18, it says, in that day, Yahuwah will take away the scarves, the headdresses, the turbans, and as a punishment to the women, give them baldness. So I really appreciate the fact that true believer women today value a headscarf or a wrap or something to show reverence for male leadership.
Right on. Yeah, I think the women did a study on that on last week Sunday. I don't know if they recorded or not. That would have been great. But I think they went into like the history of during Shaul's time, the history of what was going on there. I think the women were shaving their heads in rebellion to men, and there's a lot of cultural stuff that was going on there. But yeah, I was looking at that too. Headdresses in the ISR 2009. It said headdresses. That was interesting. Roy, I saw your hand go up for a little bit. You still got something? No? Yeah? Okay, go ahead.
3 minutes. Behold, the Lord of hosts takes away Jerusalem and Judah and stave the staff, the whole staff, bread and water. Judgment on Israel for doing what they're doing. It's interesting, 11 and 12, it talks about woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for reward of his hands shall be given him. And then it goes on 12 to say, as for my people, children are their oppressors. Interesting. And women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy path. And then it goes on to describe what he's going to do. He's going to remove all these things that you have, that you're so beautiful in, your rings, the gold, this, the mighty man is going to fall. I'm guessing that when Jerusalem was taken down and destroyed, can you say that this prophecy in the wicked at that time was fulfilled in the time of the destruction of Jerusalem, Israel at that time? That's a question.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert at that, the historical stuff there. I'm not sure which aspects occurred and which didn't, other than the destruction and, being plundered and people probably most likely taken as servants, persecuted. But yeah, as far as the details, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if women started ruling houses or whatever. I'm not sure of all that. But 12 is an interesting passage because it does show there the order that Yahuwah established for a man to be the head and to rule over, a wife or his house. The opposite's happening here, so it shows us that obviously the opposite of that must be the way that Yahuwah established it. So I don't know what else to say regarding. I'm not a historian. I'm not the best at history. So, Brother Bryant.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking about that one passage where we talk about the baldness of the hair, and yeah, I've been around different cultural groups and growing up in a military family, been traveling all over the place, meeting a whole bunch of different cultural people and all that kind of stuff. And you get to observe the physical characteristics and the culture and all that. And well, I'm going to be PC about this, or politically correct. I've observed that to this day, there's one group of females that still have a huge problem with this baldness. And I'm not gonna go there, but I'll stay politically correct. But it's very interesting. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I know where that's going. I hear you, man. I hear you. I've considered that, and it's on the shelf there as a legitimate thing. He's talking about the African American, so-called African American people. Women tend to not be able to grow their hair very long. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sister Terry.
I was going to say, yeah, when I first came into this truth movement 3 years ago, Deuteronomy 28, the curses. And when you read Isaiah and other scriptures, it's kind of like in your face. When you go out in the world and you learn the truth and then with your eyes, you can see. The weave industry is big, multi-million dollars, and it pretty much caters to one group of women. And personally, my husband and I have seen that the curse of the women over the men, we can go to restaurants and, oh my word, the yelling, the domination, the total run over your man, it's so in your face with this one group of people. And I don't mean to be prejudiced, I'm just speaking from experience.
No, we appreciate that, Terry. I'm sure a lot of people appreciate what you're saying, being a female, and
yeah.
So it's a very interesting topic for sure. I'm not one to say every black person is an original Israelite. I don't believe that doctrine. That's something I aggressively preach against. However, if there is a group of people that we're going to identify as being one of the tribes or at least part of Hebrew or Yahuda, these people, the so-called African American and those that are part of slave trade, they're a lot closer. They match a lot of the curses and things. That's as far as I'll go with it. But it's fair. That's fair to say. I think it's a fair thing to say. Brother Mike, I saw your hand go up. Yeah? No, I'm seeing things. All right. Wow. All right, guys. 3 chapters. I think let's end it there. That's a nice long one. Let's cut it. That was fun. That was good. And, if you got questions, you're seeing this on YouTube, email me, devotedtoyah@gmail.com. I'll pass along the questions to the group. If you got questions for specific people, let us know. And that's it. Shalom.